This is CaneSport Inside the Lines on the Ourlads Football Network. We are back, and it couldn't have come at a faster time, Gary, because I don't know if I could have taken. I'm sure these Miami Hurricane players are just dying to get back out on the field when you're on such a roll. They've won 4 straight, the last 2 wins in dramatic fashion in the fourth quarter. I know that most of this was shut down because of players on Miami. They just couldn't field the proper roster. I get that, but still, the kids, they have just got to be jonesing to get back out there on Saturday night.
Well, Greg, when you look around the country, I think you got, two parallels in work here. I mean, you've got the teams that are having crummy seasons that are probably thinking, man, we don't need this anymore. We're sick of this, having to get the tests every week and worrying about who we're around and all the stress that comes with that. And then you got the teams like Miami that are, in the top 10, looking at a good off season. Kids are showcasing themselves for the National Football League. And I would think you're right that the Miami team is very anxious to get back out there and play Saturday. So I'm expecting Miami to be very invested in this game, and I'm not expecting Duke to be incredibly invested in this game, to be honest with you. Yeah. I mean, they've been struggling so bad, Greg. Giving up 56 points the last 2 games. I understand against North Carolina. North Carolina's got a very high-powered offense. But, then to give up 56 to Georgia Tech, that tells you they're done. They were done then, and I don't expect it to be any different this Saturday.
Yeah, it really was surprising, the way that they played against Georgia Tech. But, yeah, historically, though, they have had a really bad go of it after they play their rivals, North Carolina. I think they were 1-9 against the spread the previous 10 games after North Carolina.
Really?
But
wow.
Getting blown
Why
out.
Didn't you tell me that a week ago? Jesus.
But getting blown out by Georgia Tech, that's unexpected. That is.
You remember what? Do you know what the line was in that game? I know
Duke was favored. I think it was, but I'm pretty sure.
Carolina would have been a heavy favorite, but
no, it wasn't much. And it was because it was at Georgia Tech, even though the really doesn't matter. But yeah,
they won by 32. So.
Yeah. So that
I would have liked to know that trend,
right?
I can't imagine the line was 32.
No, it wasn't anywhere close to it. So Miami, meanwhile, they're getting ready to take on this Duke team that has beaten them the last 2 years in the same type of role. They've been the dog in the game the last 2 years. Duke has still been able to upset Miami the last 2 years. So that's definitely a wake-up call for Miami. They know they got a little double revenge action. Before we get into that game, though, a few things. We'll get back on Virginia Tech too. But since then, there's also the news came out with the Notre Dame schedule, the ACC schedule, that Notre Dame is now in the ACC championship game. And unless Clemson loses to Virginia Tech, Clemson will play Notre Dame in a rematch for the ACC championship. We talked about this before, but are we pretty much... This better mean that Notre Dame is in the ACC for good. I'd be really upset if I was Miami and Notre Dame came in for a year and stole their trip to the ACC championship and then just decided, nah, we don't want to be in there next year. This better be it. Notre Dame better realize how good this is, that they're in the ACC, and I hope this is going to be at some point, somewhere they're going to sign a contract long-term to play in the ACC.
I'm with you on this one, Greg. I think Notre Dame has resisted it, but sometimes you got to let go of tradition and history, and I think this has come to that point for Notre Dame. Look how well this season has worked out for them playing in the ACC. They're in the national title hunt. Clemson, they played Clemson in the regular season, which was the number 1 team at the time. They were able to win that game, even though Clemson was shorthanded. But it's just worked out phenomenally for Notre Dame, way better than playing an independent schedule probably would have. And if they come to the ACC, they make more money than they make from their NBC television contract. There's a lot of positives to it, in my opinion. Now, you've probably got a veteran hierarchy at Notre Dame that's seen over things for quite some time. And those types of people are usually very reluctant to let go of what they hold sacred. And, we know that Notre Dame, being an independent, has always been a sacred thing to
Yeah.
Irish football. But, Greg, it's time to let go. It
Yes.
really is. This is a new day, a new time, and college football is different. And to be sitting out there on an island by yourself, essentially as an independent, doesn't work to me anymore. I like them in the ACC.
And and again, it's not like they're not in the ACC and other sports. So,
Correct.
uh, and
Where it's also working well.
yes, and sooner or later, look, we all know it may be maybe a few more years, but we all know that there's a big change coming in college football. And when that big change comes, no team is going to be by themselves and in some sort of independent crap. So there will be a change sooner or later anyway, that they're going to be forced into a conference or some sort of mega league in college football. So why not just go ahead and just get it started now? Come on, be a
Yeah,
realist.
just do it. Yeah, and Notre Dame, Clemson, Miami, North Carolina. Eventually, you got to think Florida State gets their act
Yeah, that'll
together a
be
little
big for the
bit.
conference. Absolutely.
It's a good conference. I mean, that's a
Yes.
good conference.
Yes.
Now you're starting to challenge the SEC, in my opinion, in terms of the quality of a conference.
As far as Miami, if they do not get lucky, win out and Clemson loses to Virginia Tech and get to the ACC title game, they're looking at Orange Bowl. Is that correct?
That is correct, and I like it. Like, I like the idea of playing Florida in the Orange Bowl. If it plays out that
Yeah.
way,
Yeah.
it'll be great. Even if Florida is able to beat Alabama, then maybe you play Alabama in the Orange Bowl.
Maybe.
I mean, I'm fine with either one of those games. I think it would be a great final report card for Miami. I think they would be challenged to win that game on face value if the teams that they're, if it's Alabama or Florida, they come into the game in the state that they're in now. However, they need that too. It's like you need real measuring sticks to see where you are. And right now in this season, Miami's had one, and that was the game against Clemson, and they didn't match up very well. So, but even though they lost, I am one that finds it very important that you have a realistic picture of where you are when you are trying to build back a program.
What happens more than likely if they were to lose one more? Let's say they lose to North Carolina and they win, they beat Duke and Georgia Tech. Where do you think they go then? Because are they done with the Orange Bowl at that point or no?
I don't know, Greg, because North Carolina's got 3 losses. So, that would be interesting. I don't know if a 3-loss North Carolina gets to go to the Orange Bowl over a 2-loss Miami. So, that remains to be seen. But
what about attendance? Is that still a complete unknown at this point?
It's a complete unknown. Like, we don't even know how many fans they would allow at the Orange Bowl game. I don't think selling tickets is an issue at all. Like, I don't think that that's a factor in who gets assigned to the game because of the way things are. You're not going to have a full house. So, it's a big difference between, say, selling 15,000 seats and selling, 70,000 seats.
Well, that's going to work for some of these programs that don't travel well, because that's that. Or teams like Miami might work against them. Hey, we're at home here. We're going to get all our crowd. And, well, not going to happen this year, so we're not going to take that into account.
Yeah, a loss to North Carolina complicates it for sure.
It does, yes.
But the Orange Bowl does have to take an ACC team, and I guess
could they take the loser of Notre Dame Clemson?
They could if that team doesn't get into the playoffs. So it could get tricky. Yeah. But right now it's looking like both Clemson and Notre Dame will be in the playoff, and unless Notre Dame can beat Clemson again, at which point then I think Clemson does come to the Orange Bowl. And Miami, if they're sitting there with 1 loss, maybe Miami goes to one of the other bowl games, the Fiesta, the Sugar, one of those maybe.
Either way, it's a good bowl game, but got to win the games. Got to win them all.
A 1-loss Miami will be in a good bowl game.
Yes. Lose to North Carolina and win the other 2, and then who knows? It's up in the air.
Yeah.
So the old schedule, the main difference between the old schedule and the new schedule is that you are replacing Wake Forest off the schedule, and what else?
Yeah, you're replacing Wake Forest with Duke,
With
which,
Duke, yeah.
I've been joking about it this week. It's like
That's a big.
it's like when you go through a year where the stars are
Yeah.
aligning the way they are this year. I mean, if you're looking for an easy path to victory,
Yeah.
I would say playing this downtrodden Duke team that's just struggling abysmally right now is a way easier spot than going and playing what I consider a very dangerous Wake Forest
Yes.
team that has offensive weapons, that plays extremely hard. I thought Wake Forest was a potential trap game for Miami. When I've watched them this year, I've been very impressed just with the effort that those kids give. And I think this is a considerably easier spot. With all respects to the fact that Duke has beaten Miami 2 years in a row. If they beat Miami 3 years in a row, you might as well just shut down the program. Okay, I mean, come on, losing to Duke 3 years in a row,
Especially
so
as a 14.5 point favorite.
Yeah, I don't expect it to happen. I expect Miami to win in a rout. I don't see how Duke is invested in this game, and I think Miami will be very invested. And I expect Miami to just pour it on offensively and win pretty convincingly.
And they need it because the last two games, obviously, when we were on the air a few weeks ago, we talked about the big North Carolina State game. There were so many twists and turns. Well, we didn't have a chance to talk about the Virginia Tech game, but that was another good one. We'll take a look early in the game. First of all, it was nice to see Brevin Jordan back, but it is interesting that Miami is 7-1. Derek King has looked fantastic, and Brevin Jordan really hasn't been part of this offense.
No, it's really been interesting. I mean, he's been in and out of the lineup all year. Has not come close to having the kind of season that he had in mind for himself. And the thing that's going to get interesting, Greg, is the decision he's going to have to make in a few weeks in terms of going to the National Football League. There is no doubt in my mind that Brevin Jordan came into this season expecting to go pro at the end.
And thinking he's a first-round draft pick.
And thinking he might be a first-round draft pick.
Now he's not going to be not the way he's played this year. He won't be.
No, he will not be a first-round draft pick. The question he's going to have to figure out is, will he still be a second-round draft pick?
Yeah.
If he's a second-round draft pick, I think he has to go. If he's not, I think he has to come back.
All right, so the game started with the really crazy fake field goal attempt, which I didn't like at all. I mean, you're taking Derek King off the field, 4th and 3. It's a 47-yarder. Miami's got a good field goal kicker. And if you're going to fake it, I want to see a nice fake. I want to see something inventive. I don't even know what that was. I mean, that was just bad. I don't know what they thought. I don't know. I would like to have seen what they drew up on the chalkboard to see why it didn't work, because it looked bad.
I don't know, but I'll tell you this. It's been I guess 2.5 weeks now since we watched that play, and it's the kind of play that you wanted to forget. So in 2.5 weeks, it's easy to forget. I don't remember that play anymore. But no, seriously, it did not work. No doubt about it. I understood what the coaches were thinking. They're thinking, we're going on the road. We're going to be in a tight game. It's going to be a fight to the finish. And we need to steal some points if we can. And, they took a shot early in the game. And obviously they saw something in film that they thought would work. It didn't work.
No.
But obviously they were able to recover from it.
Virginia Tech would go on to take a 14-3 lead. Part of that was Virginia Tech had the hooker 50-yard touchdown run, and Bolden missed a tackle on that one. And it's interesting because we've talked about this several times this season, and it came up again in this game a couple of times because Bolden had a personal foul later in the game. But it was interesting because when you hear announcers who probably don't do the Miami games every week, and they will talk about Bolden, they will say, "Oh, he's one of the top players in Miami, one of the best safeties in the country." It's like, what have you been watching? Because we're watching this team every week, and Bolden does not look like anywhere close to one of the top safeties in the country this season.
Early in the season, maybe you could have thrown adjectives around like that, and you wouldn't have been laughed at. Now anybody with any football acumen would like as you are would recognize the insanity of a proclamation like that. He has not been playing well. I don't know why. He looks like he's gotten slower to me, which suggests to me that maybe he's playing a little hurt.
Okay, it's possible.
He's taken horrible angles. Is nowhere near the level that he was at early in the season. I think, just as we just talked about Brevin Jordan, Greg, I think Bolden came into this season thinking he's
That's
going to
right.
go to the National Football League at the end of the year, and I think he's going to have to reevaluate. I don't think his draft stock will be anywhere near as high to justify leaving as he might have liked, and I think he needs to come back next year. We'll see what happens. We've seen many guys here at Miami over the last several years make poor decisions in terms of going to the pros and paid the price for it.
Now, late in the first half, down 14-3, Miami had a big touchdown, and it was their best drive. King running, throwing. He had one of his best passes of the year. He had this pass to Wiggins, and it was a beautiful pass. It was right between Virginia Tech defenders. Even the announcer thought you could tell he said it was a dangerous pass. Didn't think that it was going to make it. And Wiggins does a great job as well, toe tapping because when you do look at it, if you are the announcer, there's just no way you were thinking that was a complete pass. But it was a perfect pass by De'Ara King, and he's proved once again, and he has on many occasions, that he has a nice touch when he has to.
Well, what we've seen, Greg, is as the quality of play of the Miami receivers has risen
Yes.
as the season has gone on, De'Ara King was ready. Like, he was ready for it. Like, he was ready at the beginning of the year to have this kind of passing game. Maybe the receivers weren't. And around mid-season here, they've caught fire, and all of them have. Mike Harley, Mark Pope, D. Wiggins, all three of those guys are playing really high-quality football right now and have really raised the level of their game to the point where the tight ends that we know are both elite level players that look like they were going to carry this offense coming into the season, they're almost like an afterthought now. Like you just said it about Brevin Jordan. I mean, he was back last week, but he didn't impact that football game.
No.
Will Mallory, who I think is the most underused talent on the roster, didn't impact that football game. It was the receivers that impacted the football game. And it's an interesting conundrum for Rhett Lashley, because he's got all these guys that want to get the ball, and there aren't enough to go around. And the tight ends, to me, are suffering a little bit because of that.
Yeah, we'll see. Hopefully, with a couple of weeks off, maybe and a bad Duke team.
Yeah,
This is your opportunity.
What happens if Brevin Jordan comes back now, Greg? Now you got Will Mallory still sitting over there. It's his last year, and he's not getting the opportunity to showcase how good of a football player
Mallory would transfer?
He is. I don't know. I don't know what would happen.
Yeah.
I mean, I hope not. I mean, I hope that wouldn't be the case. But you never know. I mean, that kid to me is going to be an NFL tight end, and is not getting the chance to consistently show it. Not just in this offense, but the last few offenses, just because of there's only so many balls going around to the tight ends, and he's splitting them with Brevin Jordan.
Meanwhile, later in the game, Miami was able to cut it to 24-19 late in the third. Really big touchdown drive. They converted on a 2nd and 19. They converted on a 4th and 1. There were some big catches, including again by Wiggins and Harris. And they did not get the 2-point conversion, which would have been really big at the time. But that got Miami right back into it at 24-19. And the defense really started to come up big in the second half.
The defense has been at a whole different level late in the game. I don't know what the reason for that is, but it's been like that for several weeks now. They'll struggle early, and then in the fourth quarter, they're dominant. And, I guess you got to attribute some of that to conditioning. I think that Miami, being in South Florida, nobody trained properly for this season, Greg, including Miami.
Sure, yeah.
But I think being in South Florida in the heat over the summertime and the humid conditions and stuff, I think lent itself to Miami getting in a little bit better condition than some of these other teams. And I think that's why they've been able to dominate in the fourth quarter.
And once again, in the fourth quarter, starting at their own 18, 9.5 minutes left, a methodical drive down the field, right into. And it was interesting because they didn't have many of these overhead angles during the game. So you're watching, I forget what the play was before, but then all of a sudden, the very next thing you were watching on TV is the overhead angle play. And it's tricky on your eyes because you're just not used to it. And all of a sudden, the play's on. And then King hits Pope for the 36-yard touchdown pass, and it just happened so fast because of the angle. It was just really weird. But just like that, again, another great pass, another big catch and run for Pope, and they did not convert on the 2-point conversion again, which you kind of felt, they've dropped 2-point conversions. They have now really left themselves open for a game-winning field goal by Virginia Tech. But really big drive once again when Miami needed it, and once again. Even after Virginia Tech got the ball a couple of times, Miami's defense came up big.
Yeah, and it's funny that you use the word angle because I've been very impressed with the angles that Rhett Lashley is able to get in his passing game with guys like Pope going down the field, and they're getting some quick hitting touchdowns on the slants. And things like that, and even the
one the week before against North Carolina State was the same exact type of play call, but that was to Wiggins.
Yeah, and just the angles of the routes that they're able to get in this offense, to me, is the real differentiator. I mean, listen, every offense has running plays, passing plays, whatever, but to me, it's the way Rhett Lashley sets up these matchups, and he'll bore you to death. He'll bring a running back in, 2-3 straight carries up the middle, things like that. And then boom, just as you're kind of, falling into a little bit of a slumber, he hits one of these plays where he finds he can find a way to isolate guys in single coverage. And then the sharpness and the angle of the pass routes to me has really stood out this year.
And I think that is also something that is a little bit underrated when it comes to quarterbacks. Everybody talks about, you have to have downfield accuracy, but just accuracy in general, especially with the receivers and in those 10-yard passes, because you're putting it on the money. Which gives the receiver the opportunity to make a play with the ball in his hands. So many times, if it's just an inaccurate quarterback, the ball could be high, the ball could be behind the guy, and all you have is a 10-yard pass. But King is putting him perfectly where he needs to give the receiver an opportunity to do something much bigger than 10 yards.
No doubt. He's so consistent, and he's been doing such a good job all year, and I hope it leads him to where he wants. Obviously he wants to play in the National Football League. I think that he has played himself onto somebody's roster.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a Baltimore that brings him in as a backup to Lamar Jackson or something like.
The opportunity is the big thing, because just take a look at like a Gardner Minshew. He got an opportunity. Because of the team he went to. Will King end up being drafted by a team with a really good quarterback? Like you said, does he go to a Jackson Raven offense where he's going to sit in the bench for 3 or 4 years? Or does he go to a team that doesn't have a franchise quarterback and all of a sudden finds himself in a situation in year 1 or year 2 where he's got an opportunity to start and prove whether or not he could be a starter? So that's going to be the luck of the draw.
I don't know, because of his size, that I see it getting to that point. But I do think that in the right offense that he could be, effective. I mean, I look at Arizona, I look at Baltimore, and maybe there's another team that's looking at the success of those two teams and saying we need to go in that direction, with a run pass type of quarterback. But I don't know. I think he's playing himself into a shot for sure, and for that reason, I do think that he will leave after this year.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I don't know that there's going to be a lot more for him.
No, I don't think
the road,
so.
The way he's been playing,
unless he wants to do something more in college, there's nothing more that he has to do personally as a quarterback.
More educationally than football wise.
As far as the defense was concerned, late in that game, Corey Couch had the interception. That was the first turnover of the game. Phillips had a big sack. Jennings dropped that interception, which under the circumstances could have been big. still they got the Virginia Tech to punt. Then when Miami punted, Henley booted a beautiful 52-yarder to the Virginia Tech 3-yard line. That was a perfect punt, backing Virginia. They're not a passing offense, and you push them back as far as you can. And Frierson had a huge sack on the last drive. Matter of fact, Silvera's pressure should have been called grounding. They didn't call it, but Miami got away with it because the defense was outstanding late.
Yeah, and like I said, the continuation of a pattern that we've seen of dominant defense in the fourth quarter with the game in the line, which is the difference right now between 7-1 and maybe 4-4 or 5-3.
Because they've won their last 4 games this year, including 3 straight by just 9 points. That's 3
Correct.
points a game, and that is something we have harped on this season, especially late, that Miami is now, and it's not like they're getting all the breaks because they're not. There have been a lot of calls that have gone against them that they've been able to withstand. So, but that is what's happening maybe when you're putting together one of your magical seasons. That's what you need. You need a little luck, but you also need to be able to make plays at the right time in the fourth quarter when it matters. The defense is doing it, and so is, of course, the offense of late. As far as trends this season, Miami is 6-0 straight up, 4-2 as a favorite. They're also 3-2 against the spread as a double-digit favorite. Now here's a nation.
Wait. What you said? You're talking about this season?
Yes.
They're 4-2 as a favorite. Okay.
4-2 against the spread as a favorite. 6-0, of course, they've won every game. The only game they lost was when they were a dog. Now here is a nationwide trend, which is interesting. You're only going to get this on a COVID 2020 season. Teams playing with 3 or more weeks of rest have covered 7 of 8 games as a double-digit favorite.
Really? So they're not showing rust?
No, they're not. So if anything, they're showing we want to get out there and play.
Right.
And if they're a double-digit favorite, they're not playing good football teams. So
right.
They're getting it out of their system real quick. Yeah, so that's working out. And really overall, Miami too, even though they've lost these last 2 games, after a win when Miami has played Duke, they've won 8 straight against Duke and covered 6 of 8. So Miami obviously coming off the win against Virginia Tech. But yeah, I think it's almost a good thing that for this particular Miami football team that they have lost those last 2 games to this team as a favorite. I think the coaching staff will look at it as something good. Hey, doesn't matter that we're 14-15. Don't look at us as a heavy favorite. We've been a favorite against this team the last 2 years, and look at what's happened. I'm not even sure they have to tell the players that have been there for the last 2 years. So that's a good thing for this team to know that, hey, we can't take this team lightly, no matter how bad they are.
Yeah, and obviously Miami, they owe Duke a little bit, having lost the last 2 games. So I think that's a factor.
The weather could be a factor because it's going to be cold.
Yeah.
That doesn't do Miami any favorite, being a night game. In North Carolina, it should be about 35 degrees, give or take, by depending on how late it starts getting cold. But it will be cold, and probably, of course, pretty cold by after halftime. So we'll find out if that is a big deal. Have you noticed that at all being a big deal for this program the last few years in these cold weather games?
I don't think so. I mean, I wouldn't blame anything that's gone on the weather. I mean, Miami just wasn't good enough the last 2 years. This year they're better, and I expect them to be able to handle it.
All right. As far as what this Duke team brings to the table, there's really one aspect that Miami has got to look out for, and that there's 2 players on Duke that are definitely NFL prospects. And with this offensive line healthier than it's been all season, it's real important that they have a good game, because we saw it with Virginia Tech. There were 4 drives in the first 2.5 quarters of the game against Virginia Tech that ended on a sack. It's like, anytime, in other words, it was almost like every time Virginia Tech had a sack in the first 2.5 quarters of that game, it resulted in a punt. So they have got to make sure on third down against this Duke team that they give King enough time to pass the football, and they've got to run the ball more as well.
Well, you're talking about the defensive ends, Chris Rumpf and Victor KG, I guess he pronounces it, and both guys, Rumpf has 8 sacks. Dikumeji has 7.5 this year. You're right. They've been clearly the highlight of Duke's team and certainly its defense. The thing that is interesting about this matchup, Greg, is when you look at Rumpf and what he did to Miami last year, he had 3.5 sacks in the game last year that Duke won, and 13 quarterback pressures.
Oh.
So they couldn't handle him a year ago. We'll see what happens this time around.
That's a little bit too many for one football game.
Yeah. So
they'll be
they
targeting
him
him.
At all.
Absolutely.
So we'll see. I think that, Miami's a little bit better at the tackle position this year, and I think they'll do much better.
Duke, meanwhile, 124th in the nation in sacks allowed. They've given up 33. Miami is 22nd in the nation with 23. We just talked about some of the players that came up big against Virginia Tech. It would be nice, especially when you're a big favorite against a bad team, it would be nice if Miami could find a way early in the game to put some pressure on Bryce, because Bryce has not had a good year. He's got a 9-13 touchdown to interception ratio. His completion percentage is 53%. The running game is really the only thing Duke has going for him at this point. They got 2 600-yard rushers. So you got to stuff the line of scrimmage. You got to say, all right, if you're going to beat us, but stop the run. You stop the run, you get them into third and long situations, and then you go after Bryce.
They've typically been such a well-coached team. I can't even begin to comprehend how a David Cutcliffe team has turned the ball over 30 times.
Yeah.
So far this season. I mean, it's the most in the country. And
when I see things that are really weird this season, I have to, especially sometimes, I just got to go, maybe it's just because of the year, because when you have a coach, like you said, Cutcliffe.
Yeah.
What other excuse is there?
No spring practice.
No practice.
Everybody else,
yeah.
And they're not going to be as sharp.
No.
It's not going to be as good.
Especially in a program like Duke. It's not. He doesn't have 4 and 5-star athletes out there. So there's no question Cutcliffe has earned the right to give him and his staff a mulligan this season. But look, I'm sure they expected Bryce to be much better. I mean, he was the backup for Clemson, for crying out loud, and actually won a football game for him coming off the bench.
But again, new offense coming out of the gate. Look at the way Miami's passing game didn't really hit a stride until the middle of the season. I mean, it's just been very unique. There's nothing to compare it to.
And the big weakness in Duke's defense is against the run. So if this has to be a week that Miami gets back some of their running game going. They've got to run the ball. They cannot allow. It just can't be all De'Ara King. They just can't keep relying on De'Ara King to bail it. It's almost like Seattle and Russell Wilson. Sooner or later, you have to run the football for him.
Well, this is a game where you don't want to rely on De'Ara King. You want other guys to eat a little bit this week, and I think they will.
All right. So again, the schedule has North Carolina next week, and look, schedule permitting. But if this all goes to the way we're hoping, that's the big one. Because North Carolina, they even gave Notre Dame a tough test, almost beat Clemson last year. They're a very dangerous football team. And
yes,
it's
going
to be interesting to see what happens, even the spread. I think that could be interesting. I could see that even being a pick'em. That's how good North Carolina is respected.
It'll be interesting. I mean, I would think Miami would be a slight favorite, but just because they're the home team. But, I mean, I see that as a very tight ball game.
Yeah, and a lot depends on, hopefully, if Miami comes out blazing on Saturday night and wins impressively going away. They need it, too. They can't have these fourth quarter deals all the time. So here's an opponent that's ripe for the taking. Get some revenge. Get everything out of your system. Blow them away. Fourth quarter. Kings on the sideline. You're playing your backups, and you're getting ready for a big contest against North Carolina next week. And hopefully we'll be on the air next week to talk about it.
You got it, Greg.
All right, Gary. Appreciate it as always. We'll talk to you then.
All right, Greg. Always enjoy it.